The report that is in the back there is fundamentally based on 50 case studies which explore empirically evidence of core businesses that have succeeded in doing that. And they're really just wonderful stories about entrepreneurship. I mean, we don't have time to, I don't have time to sink into some of the details, which is really fun because I think the stories are really interesting. But you have Nancy Abedarame, something like that, I always get the name wrong, who launches a camel dairy in Mauritania under all I mean, if one can imagine all the circumstances in which you're trying to establish distribution and production and marketing in a context where you're working with nomads for whom any kind of organization is total anathema. So all the issues of how you find a business opportunity in a totally unlikely kind of setup, I think is a fascinating story. There's the case of CellTel and CellPay in the mobile telephone and mobile banking area, where you get this group going into DRC, to the Democratic Republic of Congo, in the year 2000, in the middle of the most awful civil war, and see a huge opportunity in the chaos. I don't think those things happen kind of automatically. I don't think a kind of normal, sane capitalist walks into DRC and says, whoa, this is a big business opportunity. There's complete mess here. People are killing each other. There's no communications and no roads. This is ideal for my business. And yet it's been hugely successful. Construmex, which looked at the issue of bringing the remittances from Mexican workers in the U.S. to construction back to their houses in Mexico, is another very interesting case, and another case where the issues of trust and relationship building are so fundamental, because there was every reason on both sides of the border for deep mistrust for an intermediary getting into the kind of remittances business. We came up with a kind of matrix which identifies the major constraints which stop entrepreneurs and capitalists from building their businesses on the one side, and then we looked at 5 repeated kind of generic types of solutions to how you actually address those constraints. And again, so that I don't go on too long, I'm not going to go through all of that in detail, but the solution, which is the most interesting one, is this issue of looking at how these small companies, large companies, adjusted their business technology and processes in a way that the businesses could reach out and involve the poor, and true to core business and true to a core business bottom line. A couple of thoughts about this, because I want to try and wrap up. The first thought is I already alluded to it. There seems to be a broad consensus that the one thing that entrepreneurs or capitalists don't need is to be told how to find a business. And I understand that kind of intuitively. I mean, who on earth is anybody to tell a successful businessman how to do a business or how to get a business? But I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong in the kind of countries that we're trying to work in. I think it's true in countries like the US or Europe or Japan or wherever, where the rules of the game are set, where there's a certain level of security, at least there was, and where one has where indeed entrepreneurs and successful capitalists don't need anybody telling them how to make money. I mean, it's an absurd thought. But when you're trying to eclipse the culture of entrepreneurship, I would say a culture of capitalism, in environments and areas where it's actually a leap of imagination to think that you could put all those pieces together, I don't think it's enough to sit back and say, if there's money to be made, they'll know how to make it. I think it's a much more complicated relationship process that one has to build. And I think that we all have a role in supporting that. And I think it bears thought, because I do think the intuitive reaction is that that's not our business, that we shouldn't do. The second thought that I wanted to share with you goes to Slumdog Millionaire. I thought it was a great movie. I'm not here to say anything about the movie. I'm delighted it got the Oscar. But it is interesting, the debate that it generated, because in a way, Slumdog Millionaire is a triumph of fantasy over reality. I mean, it is a fantasy. And if you talk to people about Dharavi, and I've never been there, so I'm not speaking as anybody pretending to have any knowledge, but the reality of places like that in India is that they are actually triumphs of entrepreneurship over fantasy, because they're actually extraordinary stories of communities that find inspiration, that actually make tiny, but they do make tiny amounts of money to be able to carry on in their lives, and they organize themselves. And from what I've read in the same newspapers, no doubt as you, the real irritation among many people in India was not the dog word, it was the slum word. It was this idea that Dharavi is this totally unorganized, chaotic, hopeless, violent place which you can only escape through fantasy. And I think, again, that's well worth thinking about in terms of the kind of work that we do, because I think that we need to deal with this issue of how do you promote, how do you inspire a culture of entrepreneurship in these countries. Final word, just in terms of what we are doing. We intend to pursue the messages of this report, which we think are important, especially in terms of creating space at the country level. Going into these countries, creating space for businessmen, for governments, for local companies to start to engage in these kinds of discussions, including with the foreign aid community, foreign multinationals and whatever. We've launched the report in about 35 countries. We'll be doubling that this year. There's been a lot of energy around it, and we think that this is an important thing to do. We had our advisory group recently, and we were very strongly encouraged to focus on creating that space and creating a knowledge platform that would really get some of this information circulating. The other thing that we're doing that I wanted to mention, because in a way it's a bit close and links up a little bit to IGD maybe, is that the Secretary General and Gordon Brown launched about 1.5 years ago, and then Kamal Dervish kind of relaunched it with Gordon Brown in May of last year in London, something called the Call to Action, which was a call to companies around the world and countries to join in a effort to get companies to commit to action on their core business. And the criteria and the definition was strictly limited to action on the core business. And for example, President Kufuor launched it with Gordon Brown and Kamal in London. President Museveni also engaged with it in New York. And we will be, we have a coalition now which includes ourselves, UNDP, DFID, actually AusAid has got into it, Clinton Global Initiative, Global Compact, et cetera, et cetera. And we really are hopeful that will be the engagement part of this outreach to bring people on board. I hope I didn't overshoot too long, but thank you very much.